Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock. The AX Semantics meetup will start together with Prediger. We're going to speak about light and luminaires. This is a very important topic, and we have two experts with us today, Matthias and Daniel, who will also introduce themselves in a moment. What I really liked during our briefing is how they implemented the text approach and consider they're responsible for consulting their customers. I think that this was really important, but I'm not going to dwell on that any further because they're going to give the information. Matthias, do you want to start by introducing yourself and then pass the baton on to Daniel so that he can continue? Yes, my pleasure. Welcome also on my behalf, and it's great that we have the opportunity. I am Matthias Tesche of Prediger Lichtberater, and I've been with the company for 10 years. We are an omni-channel retailer for high quality and high price design luminaires. And we want to present a case we find very interesting, the history of how we developed from the manual copywriting to a highly automated solution with AX Semantics. I'm going to give the floor to Daniel. Yes, thank you. I'm very pleased to see that so many people are interested in what we do regarding lighting and luminaires and consulting, and our work with AX Semantics, automated text generation. Since November 2020, I've been with Prediger as a copywriter. Originally, I have a journalistic background, so I really learned copywriting, but I'm with the company for far less time than Matthias. So this is why, if I can share my screen, it should work. Saim says. Yes, that works well. Let the machine write it. That's a beautiful title. This is... Daniel, did you want to say something? No, I'd say you know the company much better than I do, so you can introduce the company to us. Yes, I'll give the introduction. This is our title. It's not about a typewriter, let the typewriter write it. No, we're talking about the digital machinery, AX Semantics. In this case, we are Prediger Lichtberater. We have been existing for more than 100 years. We come from Hamburg, and we are an omni-channel retailer. We have a big online shop with 5 showrooms, and one will be added at the end of this month. We have a print catalog, and we have many different items in our online shop. And 10 to 15 years ago, there was a buzzword, which was content is king. What do we do with the product texts? Everybody needed to write product texts, product descriptions, and we did so manually at the beginning as well. Here you see our sites in Germany. Headquarter is in Hamburg. We continued with Berlin, went to Düsseldorf, Frankfurt. This year it's going to be Cologne, and at the end of the year we will open a facility in Munich if everything goes well. And this is our USP in the market. We are not just another web shop having 20,000 online items to sell. We have a product that's very intensive in consulting. Luminaires, it has a lot to do with light, and light is really tricky, particularly if you want to buy it. You can do wrong. There are many things you can do wrong. So you need application skills that we have, given our expertise. And this is something we wanted to introduce into our product texts. Daniel, do you want to continue? Yes, of course. Product descriptions at Prediger Lichtberater. Our web shop went online in 2003. And that was a time when people thought that as a brick-and-mortar retailer, online will be an in-house competition. But we rather had the idea, as Matthias already pointed out, that we would focus less on the product, but more towards services, not focusing so much on the individual luminaire, but turning towards light consulting. If we had a catchphrase as a company, that would be something our managing director uses to say, and that's first the light and then the luminaire. But still, we need texts for our products we sell online. And this was done in-house at the beginning by one of my predecessors. And all the products were written texts to individually. That was a lot of work regarding the communication as well, a lot of work in itself, internal communication with sales, researching the data, and so on and so forth. This is why at a later point in time, we outsourced part of the copywriting process. But there were new problems. We realized that the briefing was so time-consuming and editing the texts afterwards that it was easier to write the texts ourselves. I started working for Prediger in November 2020, and very soon afterwards, Matthias came up to me and said, Daniel, we want to write the product descriptions with a software. And one of my first ideas was, I've just arrived, why do they want to get rid of me again? And then I realized that there is no need to worry, because someone also needs to operate the machine, to train it, and that's my task at Prediger. I am the only copywriter out of 80 or 90 staff. This means that all the departments, marketing, sales, internal communication, they all share my workforce. And as we'll see at a later point in time, AX Semantics is very useful as a support. Automation, how did it start? At the beginning, we were a little, let's say, naive almost. We wrote text with a bullet point lists. The most important properties of this luminaire are the light color, this, that. And then we realized very fast that it didn't work at all. And as Matthias said, luminaires are a special field of products. It's not a black pair of socks size 39 to 41, the socks that we sell as a pair, but a pendant luminaire features very different data than a ceiling light as compared to a recessed luminaire. There are things that are very relevant in one luminaire that are irrelevant in another one or don't even exist as data. And then there was another approach, which was, let's start from scratch again. And we inverted our perspective somewhat. We don't have the approach anymore, what text can we do based on our data? But the question is, what do we want to tell and what data do we need to produce the text that we want to produce? As said before, our USP is light consulting and the service that goes along with it. Light and light consultancy is what we want to focus on in our texts. And we do that when we recommend potential luminaires for certain use. For instance, we have certain properties like light characteristics, the light color. We don't only mention these features, but we also categorize them for our customers. We explain the importance of the light characteristic for the customer. We also give instructions or hints regarding the lighting source, the illuminant, and we also want to show our expertise and communicate it. And we also want to convey that in a slightly emotional manner, because you all know that emotion is what sells at the end of the day. Expertise, we bring it about by explaining technical terms, for instance, the IP rating We have information on the individual manufacturers, the luminaire families and series. We have more comprehensive statements by the manufacturers so that we can explain that we have good contacts with the manufacturers. And then emotion, we convey it through style and grammar instead of just the choice of words. We have different variations of the texts. We're going to give you some examples later on. I think that, particularly if you think back to where we started, we are quite successful. Emotions, conveying emotions via style and grammar. We formulate short sentences. We have active formulations, not only correct grammar-wise, but we also want to put the customer into an active position. Let yourself be consulted, which would turn the customer into someone passive, but find your inspiration, find the right light.
Ja, solche kleinen Tricks, eine direkte Ansprache.
So these are the tricks: direct communication, addressing the customer. We don't say in the living room, your luminaire will look great, but in your living room it will look great. Matthias? Yes. I wanted to say that we started in a simple manner. We worked with an agency which sold and installed AX Semantics, and they did the first setups, and this was just about product data, and the text didn't look good. And then Daniel, thank God, came along and said, I'm interested in this topic, and I have some expertise in doing things in the back end, like in the back end of AX Semantics, the different operators and functions and lookup tables and the like. And this grew into something great. So someone does it who is not part of the company, and it's not good. You really need to get familiar with the topic, and then things will work well. And this is what we did.
Ja, das finde ich auch. Mal als
Yes, I endorse that, just to speak highly of myself a little bit. What did we do then? As Matthias said, we passed through the product data one-on-one. And the statements that were the outcome, for instance, we have many different categories in our shop. Independent luminaire can be used for a dining table or for round tables, big tables starting at 2 meters, etc. And if we pass on this data one-on-one, the result wasn't good. You could see right away that this wasn't written by a machine. No human being would ever formulate like that. This is why we decided to have AX Semantics read the data. Here we've put it in inverted commas intentionally. What we do is we pass on to AX Semantics all the categories we have, and then the machine can double check if something is written there or not, and if so, the computer activates certain text blocks and characteristics. For instance, if the word or words living room are found in the data sets, okay, AX knows that this luminaire can be used for the living room. If pendant luminaire is mentioned, this luminaire is described as a pendant luminaire. And it will continue doing so. This approach opened the possibility for us to have a list of adjectives we work with, meaning that the result of having AX read it is that we have a series of rooms and applications and adjectives. And the software comes up with individual combinations, synonyms, and it works very well, surprisingly well. For instance, if speaking about adjectives, we know the manufacturers. We have a list with the manufacturers that come from Italy, and if the manufacturer is in the list, the software calls the luminaire an Italian luminaire. Or if the rooms or applications this luminaire is suitable for, if it's more than 7, this luminaire is described as multi-use. And this gives us a high quality. The data we feed the software are assessed by it and expressed in language. Enriching individual features with the use of a lookup table. This is what I presented before regarding the statements on the individual manufacturers. On our website, we have a lot of content on the manufacturers. We edited that, corrected it, summarized it a bit, and the software makes a statement or gives us a statement of 2 or 3 sentences regarding every manufacturer. And the IP rating is also explained for those of you who are not aware of this. There are two different indicators that have to do with the potential protection from penetrating objects and protection from penetrating moisture. It's not very complicated once you've seen such a table, but we explain it in words so that you know that the luminaire you have is suitable for an outdoor application. This brings us to the links and linking of different features. This IP rating, we only mention if it's above IP44. And if we're talking about exterior outdoor luminaires. Otherwise, we don't mention that. If no lighting source is delivered and one of the rooms is a living area, we also give recommendations on the colors of the light. Don't forget to buy the illuminant, take a warm white color, because this will bring about a cozy atmosphere in your room. This is what we do, and this is what ensures an above average quality, a quality that goes beyond what is mentioned in the data sets themselves. We summarize data from different sources. I think, Matthias, you're going to share another slide on that in a moment. This is why I'm not going to speak about that. So what we do is that we prepare the data and work on the data in AX Semantics. The data field designer is important. Usually it says there's the designer name, for instance, Max Muster, like an example. Very often the design year is mentioned and then the name of the designer. And if there are a couple of designers, they are also mentioned, all of them are mentioned. And sometimes it says, it also mentions a year, and then everything is separated with commas. This field is what we take apart, and we turn it into 2 variables, the designer name and the designer year. And what is very helpful here is the regular expressions. AX Semantics luckily masters. I was not aware of this before, and our customer success agent addressed me one day and showed me where I can find that, and I am so grateful for that.
Tools bei AX Semantics, die ich am häufigsten nutze. Also das
because that's one of the AX Semantics tools I use more often. The fact that the software can do this is really awesome. Without the regular expressions feature, we would have many more problems.
Ja, Matthias, ich glaube, jetzt kommt
Matthias,
Part.
over to you.
Das Ganze binden wir eben per API
We
in beide
connected
Richtungen an.
via API in both directions, which means that the copywriting is done in an fully automated manner.
Erzählst du
And
einfach mal kurz?
now you're going to make comments about the next slide. This is a slide that shows what we do. I don't want to speak about the RP, the API. I'm a tech fan. This is why I think this is an exciting project. In PIM-Core, this is our PIM system. This is where we find all our data. And as Daniel has said already, later on, we will show the categories from the Magento, which we also added at a later point in time, because like a wall-mounted luminaire, or where do we put it in what rooms? We didn't have that in PIM-Core. That was only existing in the Magento sales channel. That's the online store. And this is why the two orange arrows going to the right, we use an ETL, Apache Airflow. This is what we use, and then it goes into AX Semantics. Texts are automatically generated, and that usually happens fast. It can take seconds, they say, but we realize that it's usually just seconds. In just a few seconds, the texts are done. And then this goes back into the PIM, the PIM system, and then to Magento, to the web shop. And you can also use text in InDesign. This is the automation we have installed, and we filter according to when a product will have a text. We have different filters when defining when this is going to happen. And then this is done automatically without Daniel or the people setting up the products, taking care of that in any event. They don't really care about that because they know that the text will come.
Ja, das ist in der Tat sehr komfortabel.
This indeed is very convenient. It's all done automatically. We don't have to intervene anymore. I've brought some examples. What it looks like once the texts are ready. Here you see 3 different texts that we took from AX Semantics. We didn't need to correct them at all. We assume that if the reader has arrived at the product descriptions, we don't need to tell them what the luminaire looks like, because certainly they have seen photos, and the photos can describe it much better than we could in text. And the customer had already ample opportunities to leave and to decide against the purchase. So once the customer arrived here, the customer just needs this little last push. And this is why we support the customer in having made a well-informed and excellent decision by the fact that the customer wants to buy this luminaire. So well done, we tell him or her. And then we present the manufacturer. Who is the manufacturer? Are there some priorities the manufacturer has? And then there's a second paragraph. This has to do with service and the consulting, which is a focus of ours, and this sets us apart from other luminaire manufacturers. We explain the characteristics of the light in this case of the floodlight. What is the impact? How important is the light color? Why is it so important? We deliver the product with an installed LED module, and we can describe that very well. It's an outdoor luminaire. This is why the IP rating is explained in detail. It is also explained where the luminaire can be used, how it can be dimmed, and many other points, and where you can use it. And as Matthias has said, Here we have the different categories from the workshop, the access routes, the terrace, the balcony, the garden, etc. And also some information about the look. In this case, the colors. These are color names indicated by the manufacturer. Cool brown and deep black is something we didn't come up with, but IP44, they came up with that. And we just mention it as it is. This is a pendant luminaire. Liefer, we speak about the luminaire first, and at the very end of the text, we say that the look of this luminaire was inspired by the amphitheater in Verona, the stands of which have harmonious and smooth lines. This is a statement according to the product series that is reflected here, and the texts are even more flesh to the bone. Here, the second section in the middle, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Yes, we can see the cursor. Very good. I don't need to explain it in such great detail because you see the cursor, so you know where I am. Depending on the size, you also select the lamp holder. So there are different lamp holders depending on the size of the luminaire, etc. So all this is combined to one statement. The lighting source is not included in the delivery. We also give a recommendation about the illuminant and the light color the customer should buy for this particular luminaire. And there's another thing that I expressed speaking about the synonyms. For instance, you've got the elegant pendant luminaire, the design luminaire. These are expressions that the software searches and picks and chooses from the different categories, from the rooms and according to the rooms where the product will be used, and many other shop categories according to which we categorize the luminaire. And then it says it's elegant, it's stylish, this is a lighting object. And every time this happens, the software chooses a synonym, and this works very well. I'm quite proud of having come up with that idea, we as a company. Last but not least, you see the example with the regular expressions. The attentive observer will see that the name equal Deckenleuchter Ashwood GU10, and in the first sentence it is repeated. So we don't just copy the name of the luminaire and use it, but we change it slightly, because in the title it says equal Deckenleuchter, and in the first sentence it says Deckenleuchter equal Ash. So we changed the order of the words. Here we had the Verona pendant luminaire. In many Italian luminaires, it is presented like that, with the English word, but here it's with the German expression.
Passen dann eben auf, dass da nicht.
So we use the regular expressions, and we make sure that there are synonyms, that we don't put Deckenleuchter ceiling light twice in a row, because it's not that nice a read if this is the case. The decorative frame is fixed with a clicking mechanism by pressing on the frame. This is very specific for this particular luminaire. I wasn't the one writing that sentence. In our product data, we have instructions for installation, and our sales colleagues really undertake many efforts to compile this information. And upon request of our sales team, we have introduced a kind of loop. If something is mentioned in that loop, we mention it. For instance, if there are some instructions for assembly, please read them. And if there is a full sentence starting with a capital letter and ending with a full stop, this is introduced or used as it is, so as to make sure that the colleagues of the sales team didn't undertake their efforts in vain, but the sentence is used. Where are we at this point with AX? We hardly ever have to intervene anymore. Usually I proofread the texts the software comes up with, but it's been a long time since I had to intervene last. It's very efficient and very smooth. Measuring the success regarding the monetary output that this means for us, we haven't measured this, but we assume that lacking product descriptions, that this would call the customer's attention in a negative way. Maybe you've seen that our products are not bargains. And as a customer, I would expect the information to be there if I spend so much money. I would really expect for the company to come up with proper texts. The biggest success regarding the automated texts with AX Semantics is that there are resources available at my desk that can be invested in other topics. The catalogs Matthias mentioned at the beginning. On our website, we have a advice section where we give tips regarding illumination and lighting. I also revise that, and the newsletter is also at my desk. We work with a PR agency, and these are resources that are vacant that I have. I am available for working on the other topics. I don't need to invest that time in for the product texts. How much work that would be differs from one season to another, but on average, I'd say it's one work day per week that I don't need to invest because we have automated product texts. There's one thing that we initiated recently, just a few weeks ago, and that is that we also have the texts for our category pages be written by AX Semantics. We are not talking about the big categories like indoor luminaires and others, but the texts were defined by human beings a while ago, but we have a stainless steel bollard luminaires. The name says it that there wouldn't be such a lot of variance in the text, and the copywriter would also get dizzy because he or she would have to write something 3 times on the same product, but the machine doesn't complain about such a task. And what we like is that we can use the manufacturer's statements and also the family statements. We can reuse them. We are happy about that because that was a lot of work. We invested and we can now use it, have the benefits of that work. And also, as AI texts via ChatGPT is something that everybody speaks about, but for us, this is not an option. A, because of the workload, writing the prompt, doing the briefing, and also working on the text, that would be a lot of work. What is important from my point of view is the responsibility in particular. If ChatGPT invents something, we don't know how it came up with. Between the prompt and the final result is a kind of black box. With AX Semantics, I know that any mistake that there is be it a minor typo. These are mistakes that I introduced, and it's in my responsibility to eliminate this typo, for instance. And this has been it on my part. Thank you very much for your explanations and for the interesting slides and insights. First of all, very beautiful texts, and I'm curious to see the questions that our audience might come up with. Please feel free to write the questions into the chat, but you can also use the Q&A tool. We make sure that we will not miss any questions. If not at this point, I would like to ask a first question. Daniel, you mentioned categorization. You know that you come from a journalistic background. This is something typical for this profession. I'm sorry for that. No, that's all good. But it's very typical and very much to the point. But allow us to speak about the content-related challenge. If you want to help the reader, what do you do? Well, the idea came up during your writing workshop. I also participated in this workshop, and you said that product texts are a great opportunity to communicate things about the company, information you want to convey. We have the expertise, for instance. We are the lighting experts. Regarding the content, taking the example of a light color, all of our consultants, you could wake them up in the middle of the night and then could tell you right away what the importance of a color is, about the temperature, what impact does that make. But this is also a question that you hear 5, 6, 7 times, the question about the luminous color. This is why we take note of it. We know what luminous colors work in what living areas, and we have a comprehensive list of rooms and applications. If it's a living area, for instance, we suggest a warm white color. This means that what we do is that the qualitative characteristic, let's say 2700 Kelvin, it's a number, we translate that into a 1 or 2 sentences statement. Well done. We hear omnichannel time and time again. Matthias, omnichannel is the future. You're going to open another shop. We also need online. Let's speak about the topic of digital content you need for your website. Is there any channel via the different stores, Hamburg, etc.? Stuttgart is missing. I'd like to draw your attention to that. Greetings to the owners. Stuttgart needs a Prediger shop. Are you conversing with the shop about what the customers want to know? What absurd ideas do they have? Do you receive these queries or questions so that you can use them in your content? Yes, this is not done in an automated way like you could do it with AX Semantics, but we do have feedback rounds. And it is a lot of work because the consultants usually don't have a lot of time, the shop assistants or store people in the stores. As Daniel has said, the question about the luminous color, if this question is asked 6 times a day, we hear it, and Daniel would include that. This is very nice. Omni-channel is a kind of a feedback channel that is very helpful, is very important, this feedback loop. And if I may add something very briefly, our marketing office is on the 5th floor, and on the ground floor we have our showroom. This means you can go downstairs and have a cup of coffee with the colleague down there. If there are certain topics, light consulting topics, for instance, the colleagues are also interviewed. thanks to my journalistic training. This means that we can retrieve a lot of content here already, and we have short distances. I think that this is where the omnichannel approach works very well already. I like the text so much because you explain so many things, and we're talking about a luminaire. You gave an example of the price, 500 to 600 euros, but it can also be 2,000 euro. And I think it's important if I order a luminaire and pay 1,700, I mean, and it doesn't include the light source, and at least I want to have the information, that's a relief to have the information that where to get it. I don't really bother about, it doesn't bother me that it's not included, but it would bother me if nobody told me where to get it. I don't care about buying a light bulb somewhere, but I think it's important that the information is given, or the designer's name. I mean, you pay 1,700 euro for a luminaire, and then your spouse asks you, why was the luminaire so expensive? And I can say the star designer designed the luminaire. It comes from Italy. So what's very important is the storytelling, as we learned. We don't want a dissonance to be emerging, and this is good if I can explain how the product was created. One last question. We don't have much time left. What is the future, Daniel? You mentioned the category texts. I'm grateful you mentioned them. What are the next steps? Are there small improvements? Are there big projects? What is there to come? Matthias, I think this is something you should answer. Regarding content, you should answer that, but the SEO work in different categories, this is something that we can expand upon. Search engine optimization needs text and content. What we are doing is we're including a new PIM. We have to redo the interface. This is what I'm in charge of, but this is just a standard procedure. Writing different texts of type, and we start with categorizations. I think this is the next project we have. You already know what PIM you want to use, or is that top secret? No, it's not top secret. PIMcore, I mentioned it already. Oh, you are going to change over to PIMcore. Okay, yes, we're going to switch over to PIMcore. Very nice. Okay, so much on that. If there are no further questions from the audience, at least I don't see any hands raised. Heike, Karina, is there something I didn't see? If not, we could have a look at our survey. What about the answers? Yes, I don't see any other questions. I can confirm it. And I'm going to end the survey, and I'm just looking at the results now myself. It's very balanced. Again, 30% of our participants said that they think measuring the performance is important, and they do measure it. 10% think it's important, but they don't do it yet. It's a small part. 50% don't measure, but think it's important. That is the biggest chunk, and 10% don't think it's important and don't do it. Yes. It's exciting to see that 50% find it's important but don't measure. Feel free to get in touch with us so that we can show you all the great things you can do and how the success of content can be measured. Thank you very much for participating in this survey. I would also like to advertise something, KPI for content. There's also a blog post on ours. So if you don't know what KPIs are important, you can go through the blog post. But we can do that later on and when we send the email around. Okay, Daniel, Matthias, thank you very much for your highly interesting presentation, for the profound insights you gave us. Content quality, what is decisive at the end of the day is the author. the author determines the system, all the good ideas that the author comes up with ends up in the system. Technology change, we keep our fingers crossed for you, Matthias, so that everything works well and will be successful. I hope we'll see each other soon. In 2 days, we'll have the next meet up. Heike, our topic will be raising the product descriptions to the next level. This will address the topic of how to get from a pure description, feature description, to valuable product descriptions that, if I measured them, will show me some positive results and should be state of the art if you take into account today's buyer's expectations. And you will bring examples, right? Yes, I will prepare the examples. At Majorca, I have some days to prepare mentally for the presentation. Thanks to the two of you, thanks to Simultano for interpreting. It's a lot of work, and we know and we're very happy that this works so well. Thanks on our part. It's a pleasure. Thanks to the members of the audience. Stay healthy, and hopefully we'll see each other again in a fortnight for the next meetup. Have a great time. Take care and see you soon. Bye-bye.